Hey guys, welcome back to another new video, and for today's drawing I just thought of drawing green tea. I'll place the cup on a clean white paper so that I have a clean white background and set things up and change the lighting, and once I'm happy with that I'm going to take pictures of it, and just like I said in my previous video, I'm going to use these photos as my reference as well. Just as in my previous video, I'm using my Brustro artist sketchbook, and this is a really good sketchbook if you're a beginner. And also I'm using my touchcool markers, for which I have a review, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. And as always, all the materials that I use in this particular video will be listed in the description box, so don't forget to check that out. And now I'm going to start with my sketch. And for the sketch, just as I did in my previous video, I'm going to do an elaborate sketch. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to mark all the necessary details that I want. Even the slightest highlight, I'm going to mark that so that it will be easier for me to color later on. And now I'm going to use my kneadable eraser to lighten the sketch even further. And I know that I've said this like a million times in my videos, but this is the most important step. You need a light sketch to begin with so that no graphite will be showing through at the end of your drawing. To choose my colors, I'm going to look at the color swatch that I created for the touchcool markers and compare this to the reference and then pick out all the major colors that I can see. Even though it didn't seem like it requires a lot of colors, but actually it did, and I used a lot of colors to begin with, so I'll leave the names of all the colors that I used in this video in the description box, so if you're interested, you can go check that out. Just when I used my markers, that's when I realized that I didn't place a paper underneath, so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to place a paper underneath that so that the ink won't transfer to the next page. Now that we are safe, we can start the coloring process. For this marker base, all we have to do is block in the basic color that you can see in your reference image. In some areas, I had to mix the color that I want, and to do that, I just had to layer these alcohol markers on top of each other, just like I'm doing right now. I added green, and on top of that, I added gray so that I can get the color that I want. And this is the only way of mixing any alcohol markers. So don't feel that you're restricted with the colors that you have. You can still mix it, but only to an extent. So don't rely on that so much. In some areas I wanted a smooth transition like here, so I'm using my blender and then I'm blending it out so that it have a nice transition. While it's still wet, I'm adding another layer of the colors so that it will be intense. In my opinion, the major use of a colorless blender is to soften the edges a bit more and also to dilute that color, to make that color less saturated or less concentrated. And other than that, I don't think that it has that much of value to blend two colors together, because in my experience that didn't happen. So if you think otherwise, then do let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. In here, the gray color was too saturated for me, so I am blending it out with the colorless blender to make it less saturated. I've said in the beginning of the video to go from lightest to the darkest color, and in some areas, for example the tea bag and the reflections on the glass, I started off with a darker color that I can see, and that is because I have a very light sketch. So if I add my lighter color, then I won't be able to see the sketch at all. So that's why I'm blocking in all the darkest colors in certain areas, only in certain areas, and then I'll add my lightest colors. Try to be flexible with yourself and try to find out what works best for that particular drawing. For the color pencil layer, I chose all the major colors that are related to yellow, and that is the lemon yellow, yellow ochre, or a brown that is closely to a yellow shade, and that's what I chose a lot for the green tea thing, and also greens for the tag. Once the marker base is completely dry, I'm starting with my white color, and the first thing that I do is I mark the highlights, and that is because I don't want the highlights to disappear once I add all the other color pencils, and also to mark the highlights and maintain them as much as I can, and that's why I do that first. Once I've done that, I'll move on to all the other colors, and all there's left to do is correct all the values that I can see in my reference image, and also to add details that I couldn't add with the markers. In our marker base, there will always be some areas where it just won't have a smooth transition between colors. So in this color pencil layer, you can fix it by adding lots of layers of color pencil on top and try to make it look as smooth as it can. So the major things that you can do with your color pencil layer is to correct all the values that you can see in your reference image, and also to fix up all the rough areas of your marker base, and also to add details that you won't be able to do with a marker. Once you are happy with your color pencil layer, you can then go in with a colorless blender and blend everything out. And since this has alcohol in it, it is going to dissolve all the color pencils and make the drawing look much more smoother. The blender will get dirty because of the color pencils, so be sure to clean the blender from time to time so that you don't transfer that muddy colors into the drawing. For the final step, I'm going to use my 6B graphite pencil to add the shadows. I'll add these pencils to the shadow areas and then smudge it with my fingers so that I have a smooth shadow. For the darker areas, I'll add another layer of these pencils and smudge it with my fingers to get a darker shadow. I also add a little bit of color in the shadows as well to make it look realistic. For some lighter areas in the shadows, I use a stick eraser to erase the graphite, and in some other areas, I'll use a kneadable eraser and knead it to the shape that I want and lift off the graphite from that particular area so that I have a softer shadow in that area. Once I'm happy with the shadows, I'll go in with the alcohol blender and blend everything out, and since it has alcohol in it, it is going to dissolve the graphite and I'll be left with a neat soft shadow. And now I will reinforce all the highlights that I can see in the reference image using my white color pencil. For the final step, I'll add the brightest highlights that I can see in the reference image with a white gel pen. Just a few finishing touches here and there, and the drawing is finished. As you can see, when we use an alcohol marker as our base for color pencil drawing, it is going to cut down our drawing time, and also it is going to make the drawing look much more realistic than just using color pencils alone, because it is going to get rid of all the grains that you can see when you use only color pencils. So I really hope that you give this method a try, and if you do, then do share it with me on social media like Pinterest and Instagram, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, then do give this video a big thumbs up and share your thoughts. I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye everybody.